It is the gift from Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi.
To Bhagavan, happiness is our true nature. So everything that's related to teachings of Ramana Maharshi, it brings out more and more happiness.
So, is there a problem in any of this?
The problem isn't that. The problem is the outward going mind that just is too restless to keep um, to keep on the path constantly. That's the problem, maybe.
And Ramana's greatest teaching? Giving up who you think you are.
It's not easy to let go of this very long idea which has been going on for so long, that I am this person, I am this individual, this is me. There's still this ego constantly there which is doing these things. That's why Ramana's teaching is radical, because it goes straight to the point of eradicating the ego, the one who's doing anything or not doing anything.
It is a huge chore, giving up who we think we are.
And it's so challenging that most of us just don't want to do it, or we're not ready to do it yet. We want to still hang on to ourselves.
Welcome to Souljourns and to the life-changing story of Jussi Penttinen. This interview was recorded in Helsinki, Finland and Coronado, California on July 14th, 2023.
Jussi
Hello?
Penttinen from Helsinki. We welcome you to Souljourns. It's a long ways between you and me here in San Diego,
Yes.
Finland, but I've been looking forward to this, and I just want to say welcome and how are you doing?
Thank you very much, Ted. I'm doing fine.
What led you to follow his teachings of self-inquiry, though you call it self-investigation?
Investigation, yes. To put it in a nutshell, that 1984 or 5, that in the library, a book just fell in my lap, so to speak, and it was Arthur Osborne's Sri Ramana Maharshi's teachings in his own words, if I recollect. And I heard that many other people, like David Godman and many others, this is the first book they had when it comes to Ramana's teachings. And I just opened the book and I noticed that there's something familiar in these words and the teachings, and it felt like going back home or meeting a long lost friend. I didn't know much about it. I didn't know about the practice of self-investigation or things like that. I just was fascinated of Ramana's teachings and him as a teacher or guru or whatever, and that just kept me on the road. I think from then on easily went 20 years of just, it was more like mind play, or somehow it was like a mental work going on more than practice.
Well, it sounds to me as if you were meant to be on this path.
Maybe.
I chuckled a minute ago and I heard you say how you first found out about him when it fell off a shelf in a library into your
Yeah.
I'm just going to guess I've heard it between 10 and 15 times. People say
Yeah.
the exact same thing as you just
Yeah, it's a wonder, but that's how it is.
think of that when something that strange happens that changes your life forever.
Yes,
The spirit.
exactly. Yes. And the feeling was, like I said earlier, that it's like finding a long lost friend or finding a way back. It's so familiar that there has to be some past that now it came back to me in this form.
Yeah.
And so but like I said, I didn't know what to do, how to continue. There was no, it took me a long time to just be in the mental voyage in a way that I was trying to do this and that, but I had no other interest in other teachers or teachings. I somehow just thought that this is it. I've always had this and still have this love and passion towards the teachings of Christ. And now much later, after reading more about Ramana's teachings and getting more into this self-investigation as a practice, it's wonderful to see that using these glasses from Ramana, I can see the teachings of Christ in a totally different way. I can see that it's the same teaching very clearly, with no difference whatsoever, without the bondages or loads of any other church or anything like that, just the main teachings as they are.
In all of Scandinavia, I have not seriously come across too many people who are followers of Advaita Vedanta, believe in non-duality, or know much about Sri Ramana Maharshi. Is that must be true, I'm guessing.
Like I said, I didn't know anybody following these paths back in the day, and even now, because I mentioned that we have this group called Self-Investigation Society actually nowadays, and we've been meeting once a month, every fourth Sunday physically, except this pandemic period where it's Zoom, and about 7 years. And so there, before that, there was actually nothing. It's the first time there's this regular Ramana Maharshi devoted regular meetings as a group.
For those people, non-duality must be no longer a foreign concept. It must have been
No,
for them. How did
yeah,
they how did they resist the temptation to say, oh, that's just a bunch of malarkey?
that's actually going on because, as you said, it's quite popular this on Facebook groups and this neo-Advaitins and all kinds of new. So it feels like, yeah, I know that thing. But now that from Michael James and all these people, you understand that the teachings are so much deeper from Ramana Maharshi, that this he brought something very, very clear and new and updated to this the core of Advaitic teachings, and also a practice. Yeah. So, for example, everybody knows that that Tatvamasi, that thou art. But so what? It doesn't help much because I feel like Jussi anyway, so it doesn't feel like I'm Brahman or something. So we need some kind of a how to understand this. If that's the fact, how to understand it. So we have to know who we truly are. And these kind of, I think this is lacking for most Advaitic people, though they are, I think it's because the Western mind feels that it's so simple, I don't have to do anything, I'm already that.
Yeah.
But actually, in fact, we don't, are we that? We feel like I'm an individual person doing this and this. And so it doesn't help just as a theory to say that, announce that I am that, I don't have to do anything. Well, that's not enough. And so that's, so I think in this way, yes, people do know Advaitic teachings in Finland, and they're even more popular at the moment, and it's growing, but not in this sense, in my opinion, that it's really going deep enough.
It's funny you should bring this up and in such great detail, and I appreciate that, but it's the very thing that brought me most to, I think, Ramana Maharshi's teachings. Mm-hmm. I've expressed it rather crudely before, that being raised Christian and a devout, going a lot of teachers along the way, but nobody's ever invited me to come and roll up my sleeves and really get to work with self-investigation, because it was just not anything taught before and anything I had experience with. I find that I love that. I find that I crave it.
The beauty of it is that there's no expert in this path, and nobody knows enough, and there never will be this ending. Or maybe the end will be, but then we're not talking anymore. But the idea, the beauty of it is that it goes clearer and deeper while you practice. And you can see the beauty of it, and the love for practicing it, and the love for knowing who I am grows while practicing. So it's not enough to just mentally understand that I am that. It doesn't really take you anywhere. I don't think so. From my experience, it's just quite flimsy, shallow way of understanding anything. It doesn't, it's like only like believing. Like a good question might be that when I've been in many other societies, spiritual societies, to checking out what's going on quite deeply actually, and everybody's talking about know thyself, because that's what they said in ancient Greece, know thyself, and they're repeating these words, they're repeating these wisdoms. But when I asked, okay, prove me, how do you know that you are a spirit? You're constantly saying we are, our real nature is a soul. I'm a soul. Well, prove it to me. How do you know that you're a soul? It's not so clear after that. We don't know ourselves.
No, it's not. You mentioned a name that's quite familiar to me too. The group I'm in, maybe my wife and I joined it 4 years ago, let's say. And shortly thereafter, we invited Michael James, whom you referenced. I consider him a Ramana Maharshi'S scholar. He's 20 years, Malai. He comes to us live on Zoom for 2 hours the first Sunday of every month. He's just outstanding, as you know.
Yes, I think he's the number one
Yeah.
Number one, when it comes to these teachings, there's no one else who has dedicated 50 years of his life only in this one teaching so thoroughly. But also he can explain and open up these very detailed, in a detailed manner, all these very specific, opening up the words word by word, what it can mean in very different perspectives. So it's not, he's very thorough and precise. And of course, because he, as you mentioned, he lived in Tirumalai for 20 years and worked with Sadhu Om, one great disciple of Ramana. And so that means that he learned Tamil good enough to translate. They translated from Tamil to English together. So it's an unique work all together. Because from, actually, we have, from Michael James, we have a person who has been contacted and worked with the root guy from Ramana Maharshi, the disciple from Ramana Maharshi, and also Sadhu Om, who worked with Muruganar, who was the closest disciple of Ramana Maharshi as a poet, and writing down the teachings in a very beautiful way. So we have a lineage which goes directly from Michael in this sense to the core of Ramana Maharshi, because luckily, I'd say, it's a grace that Ramana Maharshi isn't the figure that's so far in the past. It's in our time, basically. So it's not like some saint from 1500s or something.
It's more to me than you might think. I was alive when he was still living.
Yeah.
I was born in 1945, which means I was 5
Why,
by the time he left his body.
you should have gone to India immediately. It's not easy to let go of this very long idea which has been going on for so long, that I am this person, I am this individual, this is me. Even though we want to give it up and praise God and service and do all kinds of charity work, there's still this ego constantly there, which is doing these things. That's why Ramana's teaching is radical, because it goes straight to the point of eradicating the ego, the one who's doing anything or not doing anything. So it goes straight to the core, and it's so challenging that most of us just don't want to do it, or we're not ready to do it yet. We want to still hang on to ourselves.
You put your finger on it very, very well by referring to it as something that's radical. I always call it the highest mountain in the world. I call it truly revolutionary. I mean, it's blasphemy if you're raised as a Christian or a Jew or a member of almost any other
Yeah.
outside of self.
Yeah.
Self, but it takes a while to get there, which leads me to the fundamental question I occasionally ask people, and you fall into that category. Jussi, where are you on this long walk?
It's impossible for us to know, of course. We're looking for happiness from the outside, from somewhere else, that it will come to us, not realizing that happiness is inside us already as our true self. Of course, this is a cliche that, yeah, it's only inside, but what does it mean? It's not something that comes and goes. It has to be something permanent. Otherwise, it's again some other idea which isn't everlasting. And according to Bhagavan, happiness is our true nature. And that's why we are searching for happiness, because we're not satisfied as long as we don't find it in ourself as ourself. It's always separate kind of happiness, and it's not satisfying.
So let me ask you a follow-up question to my last one. How far are you on that journey? Do you feel there's some sort of, I hate to use a crass word like payoff, but some reward along the way as you journey towards knowing that you're the supreme self?
It's rewarding every time the thought and heart goes to Bhagavan. It's like a reward itself. Everything I do that is related to these teachings and Bhagavan is happiness. Everything that's not that, it's just like a waste of time. So, which of course I still do. I'm not constantly 24 hours, 24/7 thinking about these teachings, but it's getting more and more deeper and more constant. And this brings out more happiness and satisfaction, of course, because like I said, I haven't said it actually, but I've done lots of translating work from David Godman and Michael James to translating YouTube videos into Finnish, for example. And every time I start doing or continue doing this kind of work, it's just satisfactory because you feel that you are also concentrating on the teachings,
Oh,
and while
absolutely.
doing so, you're doing the practice. So it's actually, that's happiness.
Yeah.
And so everything that's related to teachings of Ramana Maharshi and Bhagavan, as we call him, uh, it brings out more and more happiness. The
Yeah.
problem isn't that. The problem is the outward going mind that just is too restless to keep um, to keep on the path constantly. That's the problem, maybe.
But just in a general manner of speaking, have you seen a difference in the growth of the other 9 or 10 people in your regular group that meets on this?
Yes, yes. There's one effect that caught us all. We got the flu, so to speak, and that's called Arunachala mountain. In this physical form, first of all, because we had last time we visited a few years ago as a Finnish group, we had 10 Finnish people, and I sort of organized it, and we went there, and everybody who went there and came back has changed. In
See,
this sense, changed that Arunachala, they all admit that Arunachala starts living in their heart as a entity. It opens up something happens. I don't know, no one knows what it is, but that's a fact.
well, I think people start to realize that they are, in fact, Arunachala. They are,
Exactly. Yes, that's
there is
true.
only self, there is only I, there's only the
Ex
one. Uh,
exactly.
yeah, and again, that's the big demarcation between
Mm,
religions, multiple that I've participated in the past.
mm,
That
yeah.
God was, yes, out there,
Yeah.
watching me in here.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
that I get a free ride because I know what self is now, just the
Mm,
opposite. I work harder now, relatively
mm,
speaking, than ever before in my life because
mm.
it's exciting to see progress and spiritual awakening. That's
Yeah.
driving.
And thinking about this God outside, who are we to say that we are separate from God?
Exactly.
Who does, because God doesn't say it, definitely. He never said that, hey, by the way, you people, you are not included. Sorry. We are the ones who are saying it. We
Yeah.
are the ones who want to get, and that's how it is actually constantly, unless, as long as before we know our true self, we are the ones who are separating us from the truth or reality or our
Well,
true nature.
yeah.
So it's nobody else. It's our own fault.
That makes it triply difficult to have a conversation with almost anybody else in our lives. I'm sure you've probably come across this. There's very few
Mm,
people I feel I can talk to, from my own siblings to my children to my
mm,
work partners and mates,
mm.
neighbors, anybody else about this subject, except for maybe a minute or so. They know there's something that you're pursuing, and
Yeah.
they couldn't begin, they would say, to understand it, but they're happy for you, but they're not
Yeah.
interested in it.
Yeah,
And,
I have to go now. I'm busy. See you later. There's always something. I have to warm. I have to wash dishes. There's always some excuse we can make. And yes, actually, it's funny. Even some so spiritual people who have another path they are following. But if I mention Ramana or some kind of a giving up the ego or finding the true self or guru or some words like this, they're already horrified. You can see it from the face that they don't want to listen to anymore. I'm just going to read my some other book or something. So because they know it's a threat to the ego. That's our battle we are all going through. We have to fight ourselves in a silly way because they say there's no ego, but it seems to be, at least here at the moment. So we have to find out what's going on and what's real and what's not real.
what else do you want to tell us about this group you have? How do you go about conducting this? Are you a teacher? Are you a facilitator?
But the idea is that because I'm sort of hosting and gathering people to our group, and there's about 15 people regularly who meet. We have all in all members, I would say only about maybe 40, 50, it's hard to say, but they're all around Finland. So those who can join us now physically again, there's about 15, something like that. And we actually started this year to study Ramana's teachings more thoroughly. So we're not just talking about this and that. We started going through this Nannar, Who Am I book from each paragraph. We're going through them thoroughly. And then we'll continue with other books like Upadesa Undiyar or Ulladunar Padu, the core teachings of Ramana Maharshi. And the idea is to go thoroughly through verse by verse and then discuss how do we understand, or do we what we don't understand, and try to get more deeper in these verses. And then also, of course, we're going to use help from Michael James and anybody mainly Michael James, to get some clarifications and these things. So we're like studying now these teachings together, and it's of course an individual path, so everybody can do as they feel comfortable of proceeding. But the idea is that we're doing more than just talking about these things. We want to study them.
Jussi, an inward, quiet person, was in a career that required him to be outward much of the time, but he has since returned to living mostly a quieter, more inward existence. It complements his spiritual life.
And I think this is, of course, this is all our problem, the same problem or challenge, how to turn the outward going tendency of the mind, to turn it slowly more to going inward and staying there. That's the challenge, of course, we have. And as life taught me so far, that there's nothing I can achieve from going outward. So to
And
put it in a nutshell.
ask yourself a simple question, which isn't so simple to answer. When are you going to be willing to give up your desires, your attachments?
About 9 o'clock tonight, I think.
So
I'll let you know. I'll let you know.
that's another subject that came close to using the word that I've heard used from time to time with pertaining to various groups and teachers I followed.
Mm,
For my native Christian faith, being a Catholic, people Catholic had some ripe names to call me back when I was in grade school and high school and college. But then after that, with the Course in Miracles, here in America anyway, I'm not quite sure if that ever caught root in Finland or not.
Well, yes, they have. They have it even in Finnish. Lots of groups of
Yeah.
this Course of Miracles. Yes.
And I studied it for 20 years, and it was the hardest thing I've ever thought I had to learn. And then it became something that was the most interest of anything I've ever discovered before in my life. Would come up to me and say, that's a cult. You're in a cult if you
Oh.
The same thing happened with Amashri Kurumai. The same thing happened with Sai Baba.
Yeah.
Because he had such a huge following around the world. And I think the same thing happens in the minds of many people.
Yes.
Do you just ignore that if you ever sense that somebody's thinking that about you?
Well, I've learned that it's better not to talk about anything if you can sense that it's not going to go well. It's not going to turn well. It's better to be quiet. But if somebody asks, it's always good to answer properly, as well as I can, of course, from my abilities. But when you come to heresy, I've been in many groups, secret societies, and these kind of things, which are all heresy. If I would be burned many times in the stake, just being part of any kind of teachings. But now it's like this. I'm telling that this traditional way of how church has been controlling people and not giving up the real truth, that's heresy, in my opinion. There's nothing against churches or religions at all, but if we follow Christ's teachings, we should follow Christ's teachings. If we're Christians, only way we are Christians is that we are following Christ's teachings, nothing else. No interpretations of what you can do or not. We should only concentrate on Christ's teachings. He said, "Follow me." Well, we can't follow him physically. We have to follow the I, the me. I am. That's the truth. And he said that I and Father are one. So if the Father is also our Father, it has to be that we, as our true nature and Father Brahman, is one. So we cannot deny his own teachings. If these are the words, we have to take them as they are if we want to be Christians. Otherwise, we're just doing something else. And there's no blasphemy or heresy. This is the true words of the Christ. So why not follow his words? I can't see anything wrong with that. But people are not like this. They want to believe that there's some kind of a God somewhere outside. They can do it, but Christ didn't teach that God is somewhere outside separately. On the contrary, he said that it's in us. The kingdom of heaven even is in us. So how can anything be outside? He never taught that God is separate or outside. He said God is one. So why don't we believe his words? It's quite simple.
Most of the spiritual world in this conversation.
But this is how it is, because we're not ready. I've been there. I'm still am there. We all have been there. That we just want to give a little bit, and the rest we just. When there's troubles, there's no God. He's horrible. When I'm getting fortune and fame, God is so merciful. I'm having all these things. We're not good people in this sense that we don't love God for God. We love him when we get something.
Yeah.
And then we hate God when we don't get something. So that's how we are. We all are like this, and it takes time to understand that we have to find the truth and the happiness and from ourselves by knowing our true nature, who we really are. Yeah, and that's inside of us, which we have to surrender to. And surrender is definitely it's the same thing. Knowing who we are and surrender means the same thing according to Ramana also. So of course, without surrender, you have to surrender sooner or later. Surrender the wrong identification of who we think we are. That is.
And I now see it differently than I did even just several years ago. To surrender to self.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Jussi, this has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Ted. It's been nice. All the best. All the best.
To you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.